Do you know what the temperature is in the hottest place on our planet? More than 158 degrees Fahrenheit. Here, the expression melting from the heat can be taken literally. Where and why is it so hot? Of course, it's in the desert I'm going to tell you about today, and also about what happens to the human body in such heat, and how the Bedouins survive even in such inhuman conditions. Dasht-e Lut. You probably thought it was the Sahara. After all, this desert is famous to everyone. But no, in the heart of Iran lies Dasht-e Lut, a desert that is officially considered the hottest place on Earth. Covering an area of 20,000 square miles, Dasht-e Lut is adorned with unique yardangs, narrow formations stretched along the wind, divided by sharp ridges. These natural sculptures reach heights of up to 262 feet, resembling sandcastles built by giants. Between these giant stone waves lie salt flats covered with salt crystals, sparkling in the sun like snow. Surrounded on all sides by mountain ranges, the desert lies in a basin where moist air masses from the Mediterranean and Arabian seas do not penetrate. Because of this, incredible temperatures arise here. The name Dasht-e Lut translates literally as sandy desert, a place devoid of water, which is quite true. Water sources here are extremely rare and only on the southern edge of the desert, where the salt basin of Nebhar is located, can you witness the natural wonder of a shallow lake appearing in spring like a mirage in the realm of sand and sun. Surprisingly, there's even a modern road that passes through the desert, but with its own nonsense, which I'll tell you about later and why it's even needed here. But first, let's talk about temperatures. Temperatures. I'd like to clarify one detail right away. When it comes to measuring the extreme temperatures of our planet, it's important to clearly distinguish what is being discussed: air temperature or surface temperature. If we talk about air temperature, then the absolute record holder turns out to be Death Valley in the USA. In 1913, a temperature of 134 degrees Fahrenheit was recorded here, which still stands as the absolute record. Breathing such air is practically impossible because blood vessels immediately constrict. However, if we talk about heat emanating directly from the Earth's surface, then the leadership belongs to the Iranian desert Dasht-e Lut. Here, in 2005, thermometers showed an unimaginable 160 degrees Fahrenheit on the surface. And this is not the limit, as in 2022, a new record was set. The surface heated up to 177 degrees Fahrenheit, which is apparently related to global climate change. Walking barefoot in such a desert? It's like putting your feet on a hot skillet, no joke. Interestingly, such high surface temperature readings in Dasht-e Lut are not only due to climatic features, but also to a unique covering of dark gravel, which contributes to heating. Moreover, even the air temperature here does not lag far behind the record values. In summer, it easily reaches 122 degrees Fahrenheit, and the average monthly temperature remains at around 102 degrees Fahrenheit. Nothing frightening? Yes, but that's with cool nights. Living in such conditions is practically impossible, as you understand. Past and people. But this place wasn't always so empty and lifeless. Once upon a time, people really lived here. About 2,500 years before our era, the area around the Lut Desert was a flourishing center of ancient civilization. On the western border of this merciless desert stood Shaddad, a city that testified to the prosperity of its inhabitants. While on the eastern side of the desert stood in all its splendor Shahri-Sokhta, a fairly majestic and large city that left behind many traces and archaeological finds. Therefore, the Dasht-e Lut Desert and its surroundings today attract special attention from Iranian archaeologists, becoming a key region for studying the history and culture of ancient Iran. You might ask, how did these cities exist in such a climate? Well, according to research, several thousand years ago, the average temperature was significantly lower, and major trade routes passed through Iran, so cities in this region were simply indispensable. Recently, extensive archaeological excavations have been carried out on the eastern slopes of the Kerman Range, not far from the desert. The results of these studies are astonishing. 87 ancient settlements have been discovered, covering a wide historical range from the 5th millennium BC to the late Islamic period. Of these, 23 locations belong to the Chalcolithic and Bronze Age periods, opening new pages in the history of the ancient civilization of this region. And do you know how they dealt with the heat? How do the locals survive? Among all the climate extremes on Earth, heat holds a special place. Boundless expanses of desert, where the ice sees only sand and lifeless plains, can be a serious test of survival. It's easy to lose hope when finding yourself in such a place with not a single sign of civilization on the horizon. Nevertheless, humanity has learned to adapt to such conditions, turning survival into a routine. The clothing of the Bedouins is a vivid example of such adaptation. Unlike tourist fashion with shorts and t-shirts, the local residents on the outskirts of the desert prefer to wear wide and long cloaks that completely cover the body. This choice is due to the sharp temperature fluctuations, which can rise to extreme heights during the day and drop by tens of degrees at night. The cloaks protect against sunburn during the day and cold at night, helping the body maintain the necessary water balance through slow sweat evaporation. Light fabrics reflect sunlight, further reducing the risk of overheating. Headgear in the desert is an essential part of the gear because in its absence, any available piece of fabric, be it a t-shirt or a scarf, can serve as protection for the head and neck from the scorching sun rays, as well as create shade for the eyes, improving visibility. During sandstorms, ordinary sunglasses will be useless. Special protective ones are necessary, which have side shields and fit snugly to the face. Otherwise, sand will get into the eyes. It may seem intuitive that one should travel during the day in the desert while the sun is shining. However, locals advise avoiding the hottest hours from noon to 3 o'clock, preferring rest or seeking shelter. This allows you to conserve energy and avoid overheating, which is important for continuing the journey by evening. In the search for food and water, it is necessary to know the local flora and fauna. Local residents advise watching the movements of large animals as they often head towards water sources. Under green plants, you can sometimes find water by digging a shallow pit. Orientation by the stars in the desert is an indispensable skill, as in these conditions, there may be no other landmarks. This knowledge is worth acquiring in advance, preparing for a possible journey to such terrain. What other dangers to be wary of? What other dangers await humans, and how does the body react to such insane heat? The desert, in its vastness and monotony, resembles a solitary confinement cell, posing a challenge of losing one's bearings to humans. Crossing the desert alone is not given to everyone. In fact, here one can simply go mad from the emptiness and the absence of boundaries and outlines ahead. Another threat lurking in the sands of the desert is rare but intense rains. Yes, you heard it right. Although in movies we see happy faces of people as raindrops begin to fall on them, in reality they can cause an occurrence known as quicksand. These dangerous pitches form when water accumulated in the sand after a downpour turns into vapor under the scorching sun, reducing the cohesion between the sand grains. A person caught in such quicksand can get stuck like in a bog and literally start to sink. And if in a bog you can grab onto something, in the desert, there's nothing around you but sand. Always try to take more water because dehydration sets in after just a couple of hours in the heat. By the way, do you know another interesting way to suppress thirst? Well, Iranian locals and experienced travelers use it. I'm talking about sucking on smooth pebbles, which temporarily tricks the brain into stopping feeling excruciating thirst. Although, in urban conditions, such advice may seem strange, in desert conditions, it can be your salvation to keep going without losing spirit. Similarly, a peppermint candy can temporarily quench thirst, even though it certainly won't replace water. Try it on vacation or in the summer, it really works. How did it come about? How did this hellish corner of our planet come about? Okay, millions of years ago, where the Dasht-e Lut desert now stretches, there was the Arabian Sea. Instead of scorching rocks and sand, there were gentle sea waves. But what happened then? As a result of powerful geological processes, the seabed began to rise. This gradual transformation process led to the disappearance of the Arabian Sea, leaving behind a vast, flat, and stagnant plateau. Surrounded on all sides by mountains, it is now devoid of water and its surface is covered with sand. The only reminder of the former sea is the caviars, salt flats, like pieces of dried salt reminding us of what was here before. As a result, a huge skillet was created with high walls resembling mountains. Even the presence of seas nearby does not affect the weather inside the desert. The air simply cannot circulate. This is a unique ecosystem where practically all life perishes. What else is unique about it? But sand dunes and boundless sand are not the most frightening things in this place. Dasht-e Lut is known for its mysterious mirage. It's not just a play of light and shadow, but real mirage is born from fluctuations in air density in conditions of extreme heat. You might see something similar on asphalt on a hot sunny day, but here, the mirage rises from the surface not just a couple of inches, but entirely permeates the air. Watching these undulating illusions rising above the scorching surface, you can see amazing mirage images, huge ancient cities full of life, or oases where trees are green, and the water in the ponds is exceptionally clear and fresh. But alas, these visual wonders are just fragments of imagination caused by a natural phenomenon. In conditions of such harsh heat, there are no people here, and the encountered water is a capricious river that, flowing from the mountains, quickly loses its strength and disappears before reaching the middle of the path across the scorching land. And by the time the river starts to disappear completely, it turns into a stream of salty liquid resembling sour cream in consistency. Water! This is the only source of moisture in the desert, and far from the oases you might dream of, as the liquid is too salty to quench thirst. But what else can this desert surprise us with? Road through the desert. Even in the conditions of this incredible heat, Dasht-e Lut is not devoid of human presence. Yes, as I said, people don't live here, but they do drive through. Across its expanses stretches a modern highway, 125 miles long, connecting it with the historical region of Iran, Khorasan, famous for its saffron fields and barberries. Cars traversing this route have become quite a common sight here, considering that Iran is a country with Muslim traditions. Small houses or sheltered areas called namazkhana are installed along the entire road in certain places for Muslims to perform prayer. Interestingly, each of these places is equipped with a water tap necessary for ritual ablution before prayer. This water is pumped from underground, which is a real miracle amidst the scorching sands. Namazkhanas scattered along the road, and the road itself are the only signs of civilization in the entire area. You won't find permanent residents here. The nearest settlements can only be found on the western border of the desert, where the climate is somewhat milder and more typical of Iran. Modest hotels are located there, intended for tourists attracted by the extreme fame of Dasht-e Lut. Special tours are offered to those who wish to see this place with their own eyes. And yes, tourists really are brought here. Tourists. You might ask, what can you do even in such a furnace? Even when the air in Dasht-e Lut cools down to a relatively tolerable 52 degrees Fahrenheit, the ground surface still retains heat, remaining hot. This creates a unique opportunity for extreme travelers who eagerly await the arrival of evening. It is then that they can afford the luxury of walking barefoot on the warm sands, which they say brings incredible pleasure and has a beneficial effect on both body and spirit. Although such pleasure may seem doubtful to some, there is another aspect of visiting this desert that will undoubtedly bring joy to everyone. Photos taken against the backdrop of endless sand dunes, camels trekking through the ridges, and the relentlessly hot sun become truly valuable trophies. These photos will not only preserve the emotions from an adventure in the world's hottest desert, but also serve as evidence of the uniqueness and beauty of this place, offering unforgettable experiences and memories. And after all, the most important thing in a journey is emotions. Do you agree? Okay. What animals inhabit the desert? By the way, I forgot to mention another danger in deserts: wild animals and various snakes and scorpions, which can often cause more trouble than the heat. But in the nightly silence of the Dasht-e Lut desert, you won't encounter them. Literally, there's nothing alive here except for rare rodents on the outskirts, which even locals rarely see. However, one discovery stands out, made in September 2020. At that time, scientists discovered a new species of crustaceans in Dasht-e Lut, the shrimp Phallocryptis fahimi. This unique find was made in a small lake that ephemerally appears in the southern part of the desert. Dr. Hossein Rajai, commenting on this discovery, noted the amazing ability of these crustaceans to long-term survival. It turns out that these shrimps can remain in a state of anabiosis in dried deposits for many decades and then, before the rainy season begins, hatch again and continue their life cycle. It's amazing that someone managed to adapt to these incredible conditions. Dasht-e Lut is an amazing and practically lifeless place, but all the more interesting to visit. And if you need remote work for that, you can try yourself as a screenwriter, editor, or narrator in our team. The link to the Telegram bot is in the description. Thanks for watching.